Israelis came into Palestine West Bank in an unmarked truck and killed 9 or so Palestinians. And immediately after that, a Palestinian went into a synagogue and killed 7 Jews. Lives of both Palestinian and Jews is precious. What the world can do to stop this? Secretary of State from the United States, Blinken, is visiting. Can he tell people for a solution? It may stop, but it will flare up. Is US capable of bringing peace or helping people live with each other? We have with us Miko Peled. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Miko is an Israeli author, a podcaster, and human rights activist. So tell us, New York Times, I was reading to prepare for your show, and it begins by saying that Israeli and Palestinian appear to agree. Both are deeply skeptical, even scornful, of renewed calls made by the Biden administration this week for a two-state solution here. Do you think everybody is laughing at two-state solution now?
Oh, yes. They're not laughing, I think crying, because the fact that the myth of the two-state solution has been going on for so long is the reason that Israel has been so successful, because there's a side of Israel that is saying, well, of course we want peace, but we just need to negotiate, and we want a two-state solution. And of course, no, they never meant it, but it was a good way it was like a smokescreen. It was a good way for them to allow themselves to get a stronger grip on all of Palestine, including the West Bank, and to tighten the grip on the 2 million people in Gaza, close the prison even tighter, and so on, and firm up the apartheid regime in a way that it is immovable. So nobody takes this seriously, and nobody takes Blinken seriously. As long as the United States is arming and supporting and giving billions and billions of dollars to Israel, then how could anybody expect the United States to be a broker for peace? The United States is paying for Israel to commit its crimes. It's providing Israel with the funding and the weapons to commit these horrific crimes against Palestinians, to maintain a vicious apartheid regime against the Palestinians. And this is not something new. It's not that they don't know. So, of course, people are skeptical. There's no reason to expect that the American Secretary of State will bring any change. And then he stands next to Netanyahu and they praise Israeli democracy. Israeli democracy is an oxymoron. There's never been an Israeli democracy. Israel has always been an apartheid regime. So when the American administration sides with Israel on its lies and then pays Israel and gives Israel the weapons to commit its crimes, why would anybody have any faith in the United States when it comes to trying to figure out a solution? There is no faith, and this lack of faith is fully justified.
So when he meets with Palestinian President Abbas, what does he talk about?
Well, apparently they talked about giving the Palestinians better internet, 4G instead of 3G, because Israel has limited the Palestinian internet to only 3G. And when the Israelis talk to Abbas, they talk about providing more passes for VIPs and people who want to do business. And then the Palestinian Authority sells these VIPs for thousands and thousands of dollars and puts the money in their pocket. Nobody takes the Palestinian Authority seriously either. I mean, the Palestinian Authority is a subcontractor of the Israeli apartheid regime. Nobody takes it seriously. The Palestinians lost respect for the Palestinian Authority very, very long time ago. And so this is all a farce. It's a complete farce. And it's time to move on and start talking about how we really work towards a solution to the question of Palestine.
Now, in your conversation, you mention apartheid multiple times. In the United States media, we don't hear that. What about the Israeli media? Is their word apartheid appear somewhere in some conversations?
Well, they only mention it to say that the human rights organizations, including the Israeli one, B'Tselem, but also Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, who who put together reports validating this claim and with good data and evidence that Israel is an apartheid regime. The only mention of that in the Israeli media is to say that it's anti-Semitic and to say that these highly reputable organizations are now anti-Semitic and this whole apartheid thing is anti-Semitic. That's the only context. Israelis don't want to have this conversation. They don't have it in the media. They don't have it on the streets. They feel fully justified in doing what they're doing, and they have every intention to continue maintaining this apartheid regime as long as they possibly can.
You know, when South Africa was called apartheid state, that message was on placards everywhere in campuses all around the world, and it was public opinion around the world which forced some of the changes in South Africa. In the case of Israel, it's a conservative organization like Amnesty International, which rarely calls names, is calling it apartheid. Human Rights Watch and Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem also saying that. Why that term, such a major one, used one after another by three most powerful entities, is not making a difference in the consciousness of the world?
Because Israel has learned a great deal from the mistakes of the apartheid regime in South Africa. And on two levels. On the one level, they would have shot Nelson Mandela. They would not have allowed him to continue, and they would have shot they would have killed the entire upper echelon of the ANC leadership. And so they would have done that first. And on the other level, Israel has been engaged in spending billions of dollars on a very strong public relations campaign to justify, and then also to describe anybody who uses the word apartheid as anti-Semitic. So they have a new definition of anti-Semitism, which has been very successfully been adopted by governments across the world, local governments across the United States, the U.S. government, universities, churches, and so on. And it's spreading like wildfire, and nobody dares to reject this new definition. And this new definition includes, criticism of Israel. And so Israel has been very, very smart at not only deflecting but being ahead of the game so far that it is it's controlling the story, it's controlling the media, not the media, but it's controlling the narrative the way it is portrayed in the media. And so the notion of apartheid, I think even Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker of the House of Representatives, said, the notion the Jewish people will run an apartheid regime is absurd. This is how they've been portraying it, and they've been doing a very successful job with their PR, both in the European countries and in the United States. And so that's why we don't hear about it. People are number one, afraid to be called anti-Semitic. And number two, the narrative is such that it doesn't allow for that conversation to ever be raised. And if it is raised, it is brushed away immediately.
So is there a real danger that in this state of paralysis that America fails to play any role and keep funding one side in the conflict, that Netanyahu might get away by throwing out several thousand more Palestinians from their own land?
Well, of course, except it's not a state of paralysis. It's the Palestinians are fighting very, very hard, both in Palestine and around the world. They're fighting what is unfortunately seems like a losing battle, but they are fighting very, very hard. And the Israelis are moving forward like Roman legions, through Palestine, destroying everything in their sight. And the United States is supporting Israel 110% with funding and with weapons. So that is the picture on the ground. We've got the largest power in the world giving Israel all the power it needs and plus in order to commit these horrendous crimes against a nation who's fighting for its liberation. And like I said, Palestinians are heroically standing, whether with arms or without arms, with all different methods of resistance to try to stand up and gain their liberation. So I think especially with this new government that has come into power in Israel, we're going to see a great deal more violence perpetrated against Palestinians. We're going to see a lot more attacks against Palestinians in the street, whether they're just children or men and women going to work, or journalists, of course, activists, of course, fighters, of course. We're going to see a great deal more ethnic cleansing from major parts of the country. And unless people of conscience stand up and demand the safety and security of Palestinians, demand guarantees for the safety and security of Palestinians, this is not going to stop.
Miko, State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel began the news conference recently by condemning the attack and stressing, quote unquote, we stand with Israeli people. Do you recall any incident in which American government has said that we stand with Palestinian people also?
No, no. They will say all kinds of, watered down versions of, but when they're questioned about the rights of Palestinians and about the Palestinian right to defend themselves, that is never, ever, ever discussed. Because right now, again, the narrative is such that Israel has the right to defend itself. The question is, of course, never asked against what. Nobody talks about the rights of the Palestinians to defend themselves, even though for the last almost 100 years, and certainly coming up in the future, Palestinians are going to be the victims of a great deal of violence, and they have the right to defend themselves, although they have very, very little means. And so I think that is an important thing to raise. I think it's an important question. Why are countries around the world not standing up and demanding, number one, the rights of Palestinians to defend themselves, standing with the Palestinians, but doing more than standing with the Palestinians, demanding sanctions against Israel, demanding Israel end its human rights abuses, demanding, voice for the Palestinians. None of that is heard, like you said, and it's not only in America. It's not heard. We don't hear that anywhere, really.
Well, thank you so much, Miko Peled, for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Anytime. Thank you, my friend.